And it actually
Cool.
makes this very ancient account, it's at least 2,500 years old, maybe it's 3,000 years old, who knows.
Very
It
old,
actually
yeah.
makes it very versatile. If you compare it to ancient Near East myths about creation or Egyptian myths about creation, where the world busts out of an egg or it's made from the carcass of a dead goddess, those kind of myths do not look like viable competitors for picturing the origin of the cosmos from the ancient world. But Genesis 1 stacks up really well after all these years.
No, that was very helpful. So in regards to day one of creation, is there anything else you would like to add, or would you want to move on to day two specifically?
I guess I just feel you do have this picture that God's command is very direct, right? Light instantly answers his command, and appears. And in some ways, the most natural first step in creation. There was one German scholar who talks about it as if maybe the working metaphor is of a sunrise. And at first you see the light before you even see the sun. The sun's coming along later, but actually you have the first light of dawn as the dawn of a new day. And that's not a bad way to think of day one of creation either.
Cool. So day two, you kind of spoke about the firmament earlier. That was a very prominent theme of this day of creation. So one thing that really confused me when I was a lot younger, when I was reading about the second day of creation, was the part where it says, divide the waters from the waters. For me, that was very confusing, because divide the same thing from a group that's also the same thing. Like, what's God trying to do here?
Yep. So I think this is accommodated to the way the ancient world understood the cosmos. I think this came home most clearly to me when I saw in a book a representation of a tomb painting from Egypt, where the overarching sky is pictured like a woman standing on her tiptoes and her fingertips and arching over the cosmos. And she's painted blue and she's studded with stars. And then the sun is sailing over her in a boat. And so she's made of water and the sun is crossing the sky from one side to the other in a boat. And that just really kind of brought home to me a little bit of what the concept, the world picture, or the picture of the cosmos in the mind was at that time, that the sky was blue because it was made of water too, and the stars were in it. So you see when you read even day 4 carefully, you see that the sun, moon, and stars are in this, whatever this firmament is, the sun, moon, and stars are in it. So it's not clouds. Birds are just this side of it. Day 5, they fly just on this side of the firmament, and the waters are on the other side. So I think the basic concept is a 2-tiered cosmos where we have our sea and we have our, airspace to live in. And then there's the divine realm. Between the two is this interface, this rakia, this firmament, and above that there's the ocean, as it were, the heavenly ocean, right? And then the divine realm. So I think it's like a 2-tier, an upstairs, downstairs concept of the cosmos.
So again, to bring this to, I guess, allow someone like me to relate, if I looked up into the sky, can I see both the tiers? Or, because theoretically, if it was a cloudy day, I can only see up to the clouds, right? So if it's a cloudy day, does that mean the second tier, this heavenly tier you're talking about, is out of sight? Or like, how does this 2-tier system work?
It's the 2-tier system exists in the mind of the writer and the listeners of day 2 of creation, right? So this is another case where if Genesis 1 was revealed today, a different cosmos would be described. Now, this already creates the basis for there to be, in the storyline that's going to follow in Genesis, a divine realm and a human inhabited realm, where occasionally there'll be kind of dealings back and forth. And
Yeah.
even the flood will, in a sense, tend to dissolve the distinction. But you can't get on the latest SpaceX rocket and go and find the Rakia, because there is no interface like this. This is communicated in terms of the cosmos as it looked to generations of people who couldn't even leave the surface of the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it describes the world they understand and describes how God made it. It's no use God describing in Genesis 1, 2,500 years ago or more, the cosmos and the earth as we understand it, because that revelation would be not comprehensible to people at the time.
Mm-hmm.
As it were, if God's
Yeah.
going to communicate successfully, he's got to tell them about the world they understand themselves to live in.
Mm.
And that involves the Rakia. We can't go find the Rakia today.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's something we physically cannot reach. And that what you said actually kind of reminds me of the Tower of Babel story. They were trying to build up to God's heavenly city, and they ultimately failed, right?
Yeah, you can say they're trying to overcome the distinction that day 2 of creation establishes,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're trying to
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to get up to the upper story, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not their prerogative, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Okay, so day 3, it's often called by, again, people with a more rudimentary understanding of the Genesis story. It's often dubbed as the day where God created dry land. So for you, what happened on day 3?
Mm. Well, it portrays this distinction, right? And it's a fundamental distinction of our world. So essentially, we're having categories of our real world described to us as if in a historical sequence, but the categories are actually categories of being, right? So we can very easily go and see where the land stops and the ocean starts. Well, whose handiwork was that? That was the handiwork of Creator God. And occasionally you see in the Old Testament where this boundary is in danger, right? There's what I think is kind of a cultural memory in the Old Testament of when the sea disobeyed the rules and broke its bounds. And there's this Israelite memory of the sea crossing onto land in some sense, right? The flood is a part of this set of texts. But the basic instruction that there should be a boundary and the sea should stay put and the land should be free for human use and land animals, that is built into creation intention. And you're not ready for the vegetation that comes on part 2 of day 3 until you've established that there's dry land that's going to stay dry land. So the stability of creation is a part of creation being friendly to life, this overall purpose.
So again, it kind of goes with this whole thing that, creation has to support life. And I think you kind of put it best, right? What's the point of ultimately planning for vegetation if, like you said, the sea doesn't have a border?
And so, what's the focus of vegetation in day 3? It's trees that are going to bear fruit, and that fruit is going to have the seeds to produce more trees, and those trees are going to produce more fruit. So we're most interested, more than in gum trees and pine trees, we're most interested in fruit trees and the things that are going to provide food for the living creatures yet to come.